Like I pretty much have. Doesn't get it. I don't.
It's not that much. How much is it? Well, it's not that much.
10 seconds.
Oh, I don't like
10 seconds.
forward. I don't know how much it costs.
How you deal with
I could.
Audie. I don't know if it's because he tries or just doesn't know that it's
I could.
not
I'm
convinced.
just
Bring this meeting to order. Please stand and join the board in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Approval of the board minutes.
Moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Winter, second by Commissioner Jelinski. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Additions or deletions? Motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by
Blaine.
Commissioner Blaine to accept the agenda. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. First on the agenda tonight, or this morning, is Sheriff's Report.
Morning, Jason.
Good morning, Mr. Worley.
Morning, Chief.
Good morning, sir.
I am here to ask for a replacement. We had a full-time dispatcher that left for another job, and we're just looking to fill that full-time vacancy in dispatch.
Gentlemen?
I'll
Chair,
second.
I'm going to make a motion, further discussion.
Motion by Commissioner Jelinski, second by
Second.
Commissioner Winter for further discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
Chief,
Yes.
I probably ask this question, every department head that comes and asks this question. I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do we need this person?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Winter.
how long has this person been gone? Or is it says,
Since they went to another job,
right?
a week or two, maybe, not even.
No, and I'm all for it. I mean, we need one. I don't know how easy it'll be, but, yeah.
Mr. Chair, at this point in time, if I could, we'll internally post that at this point, because we do have some part-time intermittent that are nearing the end of training. You know, as requested by the board, you know, we're typically getting replacements for it, so that's why that hasn't been done as of yet. It just was a timing thing with meetings. And so we wanted to, as soon as we could, get that out there so we could have a full staff.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Mr. Chair, Jason, everyone, we all know what goes on with law enforcement. There just is no question, and I'm almost embarrassed that I asked you the question that I asked you because I know the answer, and I know what happens in that dispatch center, or only I should say, I knew what happened in that dispatch center, and it hasn't gotten any lighter, there's no doubt in my mind, so I fully support this.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Do we need a motion to approve his replacement, or do we just? Okay.
As long as
And
it's a meeting.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Worley?
Chief, have a good day.
It depends on the meeting. I mean, we just.
When you
given
said
it's-
posted it within, that kind of.
Morning, Brad.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Morning, Brad.
Morning, Brad.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners.
I'm not here.
Come on up, Amy.
I'm not here at this meeting. No, 'cause you're-
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. This morning I have a guest to talk about, I think, a critical service that we work with TRICAP on, and that's transportation. They run our volunteer and public transit here in Morrison County. So if you need a volunteer driver ride, they will schedule that for you. Or if you need to go from point A to point B, they can assist you with public transit. So I did ask TRICAP to come, and Amy is here, who is the Transportation Director, Amy Christensen. So I'll introduce herself and just go into the report.
Morning, Amy.
Good morning.
Good morning, Amy.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Lemure and Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. It's a very nice introduction by Brad, and appreciate the invitation. Not sure if you're familiar with the TRICAP agency, but I'll start very briefly. Again, my name is Amy Christensen. I'm the Director of the Transportation Department, one of several departments within the Tri-County Action Program, or again, TRICAP as you know it. TRICAP is a community action agency, and we provide a number of programs to reduce poverty and increase self-sufficiency. Several of the programs that we provide in Morrison County include weatherization and energy assistance programs, but today I'm here to talk to you about, as Brad said, our transportation programs. We're very pleased to know that we are the exclusive public transit provider in Morrison County, and we also, as Brad said, provide the volunteer driver program. I'm going to talk briefly about the handout that I provided you today, or that was included in your packet, and then a couple of other items. Of course, we can't forego COVID and some of the safety mechanisms that we've put into place, and then talk briefly about the construction of our new transit facility here in Morrison County. So on your handout, I talk a little bit about, what our fleet size is. We've got 5 fully accessible buses. We provide a dial-a-ride service, which is basically a curb-to-curb service. And then we do also provide some deviated routes service. We come into St. Cloud once a week, to Royalton once a week, and we have a twice-a-month service to St. Cloud. Some of the highlights that I shared with you, in 2019, we provided over 27,000 rides in Morrison County. Compared to, that was a drop from 2018, in which we provided 31,677 rides. One of the reasons why we did have a decline in that is we saw a very seasoned dispatching unit replaced. Our entire dispatch center was turned over. And we do have a very complex service that we provide. We provide it in 5 different counties. And it's Little Falls, our city service, is probably the most complex of our public transit systems because you have a very vast area that we serve. You have a river that runs through it, a number of different scenarios that make it a little bit more complex. But one of the reasons why there was a slight decline in that. A little bit about our volunteer driver service. So we have volunteers who provide this service with their own vehicle. They provide anywhere from 1 to numerous rides on a given day. Currently, we have about 8 active volunteers in Morrison County. We would really like to see that number increase. We really have, as I see Brad nodding, there is an enormous need for these volunteer rides. And so, in fact, I brought some flyers, if any of you are interested, or if I could leave them behind, talking about our volunteer driver program. But it is a very necessary service here in Morrison County, so we're very pleased to provide that. The rides that we provided in 2019 exceeded 5,000. In comparison to about 4,700 in 2018. So we're seeing those numbers increase substantially, trying to keep up with the need to have our volunteers. Unfortunately, we see a decline in the number of volunteers that we have providing services for our program. There's a number of reasons for that. Generally, just overall in the state of Minnesota, volunteerism is declining. Also, there's some extenuating circumstances with volunteer drivers with the insurance coverage on their vehicles. So TRICAP provides a reimbursement equivalent to the IRS mileage rate. Typically, a lot of volunteer driver programs do not do that. They provide the charitable reimbursement rate, and there's a lot of dialogue and conversation going on about how to implement legislation to bring that reimbursement rate up. So there's a number of reasons why we're seeing a decline in volunteers. A couple of the programs that we work with in your county are employment enterprises. Of course, that's the DT&H program that's here in this county. We work with the Veterans Office, of course, with the Social Service Office, and the Minnesota Department of Transportation. So just a couple of things about our COVID safety measures that we put into place. We can't get by without talking about that, of course, because it's very critical in this time of the pandemic. Some of the things that we did right off the bat to ensure that we were going to try and provide as many protections and safety mechanisms in place is, of course, social distancing. We sectioned off seats in our public transit buses. We obviously did as much as we could to ensure that we were following all of CDC guidelines and health department guidelines. We also went on to provide essential rides only. It was very critical that we knew that part of the infrastructure of the economic health of the county to have that public transit mechanism in place. So we provided food security and basic needs transportation, also to medical appointments and for medication needs. We did suspend Saturday services. Part of that was because of our ability to be able to staff our dispatch center and because we were not seeing the need on Saturday services. We also went fare-free. Part of that was to respond to the economic conditions of the counties and critical knowledge that we are going to see some further economic impact. We wanted to contribute to that partly because our reimbursement structure changed from the federal government. We were no longer required to provide a local match. And so we wanted to pass that along to our constituents and your riders. So we're continuing with a fare-free ridership right now. We're certainly in dialogue. The board of directors is certainly considering that reinstatement of the fare-free or to come back to fares, but right now we're still fare-free. We also put plexiglass barriers between our drivers and our passengers to make sure that we're providing as much protections for them. And of course, with the mask requirement, we implemented the mask requirement on July 24th. Many of our drivers and a lot of our ridership, our passengers, were riding with masks on. But when we became a mask required state, we implemented that in keeping with that, but we also provided masks to our passengers. That was one of the things that we received some free masks from the Chamber of Commerce in this county and a number of other counties. We took advantage of that. We are passing those along to our passengers. So now, to end on a good note, the construction of our new transit facility, we're very, very excited about that. We're very, very pleased to be in this county. We want to provide a very excellent service, and a way for us to continue to do that is to provide a new transit facility. I don't know if any of you have seen our existing facility, but it's quite dilapidated. It has no air conditioning. It has no heat. Excuse me, it does have heat. But well, I'm gonna screw that one up real good. But it really needs to be updated to protect our fleet and for long-range planning. We do plan on being in this county, should the need exist, for a very long time. And so we want to invest substantially. This project began in about 2017 with a conceptual design. It's now coming to fruition hopefully in 2020 here. We're going to have a contract signed very shortly, and very excited to hopefully break ground within, I would say, perhaps the next 30 days.
Good.
So,
Can you tell us where that facility is going to be?
yes, it's actually at the same physical location as the existing facility. You're going to ask me for an address.
I believe it's right by M&K Auto, which is as you head out of town.
Yes, that's correct.
I don't know the address either, but I know the location.
I should have looked it up. I apologize, commissioners, but it's on the same physical site where Brad had.
Old
shared.
Highway 10.
Yep, Old Highway 10.
Highway 10, yes.
Amy, if I may, where does most of your funding come from?
Great question, Chairman Lemuir. 85% of our operating revenues come from MnDOT and the Federal Transit Authority.
Okay.
15% of that is a local match requirement. That's for operations. For our fleet, it's typically an 80% funded by MnDOT with a 20% local match.
And how do you get the local match then, that portion of the funding?
Certainly, there's a number of different ways. Fares.
Okay.
We get support from counties. We, not very frequently, but from time to time, we have written grants. So there's a number of different ways that we get that local match.
And then all that extra that you've been doing, handing out masks, putting up plexiglass, have you got any grants through the CARES Act to help you out with that?
Yes, we have. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So that came through the FTA through MnDOT. So it trickled down. And they just confirmed our contract and did all of the details with that. It's been a very cumbersome process, but we're very fortunate to be
Okay.
able to have access to those funds.
Great, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I would
Yes.
just say that the commissioners have always been very supportive of public transit here in Morrison County. So we as social services do provide an administrative grant to help offset that federal match, as well as pay a dispatch fee. And then our relationship as their administrative arm of volunteer drivers, that's been around since early 2000s, mid 2000s, I think, when they started to take over our volunteer driver program. And we used to have a staff specifically for that. And then we contracted with TRICAP to manage the volunteer driver program. So those are kind of some of the ways we help support transit as well as a county.
Very good.
Good, thank you.
Commissioners, anything?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Blaine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Christensen, who is eligible for transportation here in Morrison County through TRICAP? Is this for the full public, or can you explain that, please?
Yes, thank you for that question. I appreciate that. Our transit programs are eligible to everyone. This is the only the only TRICAP program that has no eligibility requirements. So everybody can ride public transit.
Excellent.
If I could just clarify, that would be for the buses. For volunteer drivers, you either have to be a part of a health plan or working with social services. So I know we have this conversation, transit in rural Minnesota is always a challenge. Here in the city of Little Falls, we've been able to navigate through that. If you talk about some of our rural areas, Piers, Swanville, Upsala, more of a challenge. So, but if you are on medical assistance or a health plan, you can access volunteer drivers to get to your medical appointments.
Commissioner Jelinski? Oh, you want to follow up? Commissioner Blaine, go ahead.
Please, Commissioner
Yep.
Blaine, go
I
ahead.
would just want to clarify that, so if you are a member of the public but that is not on assistance, you're still eligible to utilize the bus service that is provided.
Absolutely.
Commissioner, Mr.
Yes,
Chair?
Amy.
Just to clarify a little bit further about what Brad talked about too, is we provide what's called ride coordination services that cross over between our volunteer driver program and our public bus program. And so basically what that means very briefly is that we try and utilize our buses as much as possible, and that's a cost savings for the county. And so where the public bus is available, we try to utilize that to the best of our ability. Where it's not, then we would refer to our volunteer drivers to do that in more of those rural areas that don't have access to that public transit. Furthermore, people are eligible for our volunteer driver program if they want to pay privately. And it's kind of cost prohibitive, but for people who are not eligible for some of these, supportive or supplemental programs, it's still an option. It is somewhat cost prohibitive, but if it's the only option, then it's there for them.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amy, just for the sake of argument, and so I'm on the right page, if I live in rural Morrison County, the bus is not going to come to see me. I would have to come to the city of Little Falls, or if I'm understanding correctly, the city of Royalton, and meet up with the bus at that point. They are not going to come to my house to pick me up and transport me to wherever it is that I want to go, the bus.
That is correct, sir. Yeah, it's called a service design, and right now we are only funded for city service in the city of Little Falls.
Okay.
If we demonstrate need in these other counties and the Department of Transportation agrees to fund it, we are capable of providing that service. Right now, we can't demonstrate a need that the department is willing to fund at this particular point in time.
And Mr. Chair, I'm not exactly sure what demonstrating the need is, because I'm confident, extremely confident, that there are numbers of individuals outside of the city limits of any given city, whether it's Little Falls, whether it's Royalton, or wherever it is that you would service, that certainly could use your service. However, until DOT or whomever says, yes, you can.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's the caveat.
Very good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Just one other way I might say that the county supports public transit. So there is, right now, it's free fare during this peacetime emergency and as long as CARES funding is available. But when there's need for tokens, we actually sell reduced tokens at social services for the elderly or for disabled. So if you're elderly or disabled, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the token is $1 for in-town. We subsidize it at 50 cents, so I think we sell them for 50 cents. The number escapes me now, but it's something like that. We'll subsidize. So we have a number of programs that will come in and buy a quantity of tokens to help support the disabled. Or if you're older, you can come in and get a reduced token as well, so.
Commissioner Wilson?
I want to thank you for what you do. I know I sit on Council of Aging, and we're always talking about transportation for people, and then Melanie and I are on RTTC for the transportation thing, and this is a big deal out there, trying to get things coordinated. Like you just said, you know, you can't go out in the country and pick up people, and they're trying to find ways to make this all happen. And I know on the volunteer program, like you said, the insurance is a big thing, because you've got to raise your deductible and stuff for like commercial insurance. And most of the volunteer stuff was, I think, like 14 cents a mile. You're doing the other way, and that's why the volunteers are leaving. You know, plus with the COVID, most of them were older people that are doing it. So I thank you for what you're doing, and I hope we can all work together to make things better yet.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson.
I'd like to thank you for coming before us today and the service you do provide the citizens of Morrison County. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Chair Lemire.
Mr. Chair, can I just comment one more
Sure.
time? On volunteer drivers, is there anything on the horizon, do you think, to help out the volunteer drivers? I know, and I'm very clear on the importance of a volunteer driver, and I get it. I get it. Let's pick on Brad for a second. Brad's going to be a volunteer driver, and he has an XYZ vehicle. Doesn't make any difference to me. It gets 10 or it gets 50 miles to the gallon, I don't care. Doesn't matter. But it can transport whomever. We're not compensating him for any time. We are compensating him on the IRS mileage scale, period. Amen, end of discussion. I believe you compensate him for a meal should he go a long distance or whatever that is, and that's immaterial. But is there anything on the agenda to where we can still call this person a volunteer driver and give them something? I mean, we got 7 or 8 volunteer drivers for Morrison County. It's ridiculous. We should have 70 or 80 volunteer drivers. But I'm very clear, the only thing other than the goodness of what you're doing is I'm getting paid my mileage. Kind of a tough one to swallow.
It is a tough one to swallow. Very good questions, all of you. I appreciate that. So part of the idea of calling a volunteer is that they're being reimbursed for an expense.
Yep.
Otherwise, it is their time. There is a very substantial movement. It's called the Volunteer Driver Coalition, and it's statewide. And I believe it's spearheaded by the Council on Aging. I might be wrong about that, but Lori Volson, who's the executive director of the Council on Aging up here in the central Minnesota area, there's a very large spearhead of movement to try and address and accommodate the reimbursement rates. I'm not sure about what the motivation is for reimbursement for other services besides, or like a payment or a stipend. Those things are all part of that dialogue, but the major movement right now is to get that charitable reimbursement up a lot higher to try and create more incentive to recruit more drivers. You're absolutely right. The number of volunteers is very unfortunate.
Yeah, very much. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
Is it one of the problems too that then they get a 1099 on the mileage?
That is correct.
So the little money they get for mileage, now they got to pay taxes on it.
And there's one exception to that. If they become a member of the RSVP program, there's a statute that sort of abolishes that, in that they don't need to file for a 1099. Not a tax person,
Yeah,
but.
But I mean, it just shows why it's so
Yeah.
complicated to get.
And it
somebody-
saves it saves money too,
Yeah.
and they're being penalized
Yeah,
because of it.
totally penalized.
Brad, did you have something to
And I
add?
was gonna just make that comment that you just made, Commissioner, and that is volunteer driver is the most affordable way to transport people, especially in the rural areas. And so recruiting, retaining those volunteers and giving them some credit and credence for what they're doing, I think is important. So, it is, as she said earlier, they look at public transit and volunteer drivers in the most cost-effective way. Well, if you wanna get from Swanville to the clinic, the only way is volunteer driver. And so, they're definitely a necessary program that we need and to have, so.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, I
Appreciate
appreciate
it.
the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Put your brochures there so that.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind, if I could leave some tear-offs.
Yep,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good week.
Thank you, you as well.
All right, I'll move on to the public health report, if I may.
Sounds
The first thing on the agenda is approving the establishment of a new position in public health, the Regional Dental Coordinator. The last two planning meetings, we've had Blue Cross Blue Shield come in and talk about an initiative they want to move forward, and that is to enhance dental access across the 5 counties of Cass, Crow Wing, Morrison, Todd, and Wadena counties. They want to do this by hiring an employee and having them employed by Morrison County Public Health, working with their other dental coordinators across, one in Polk County, which is Region 2, and one in Otter Tail, which is Region 4. And so this position will be fully funded by Blue Cross Blue Shield for up to 3 years, provided they remain our PMAP program. Should funding not be available or the relationship with Blue Cross Blue Shield is discontinued, this position would be discontinued unless another health plan or grant appears. So I'm bringing that forward for conversation and approval.
Gentlemen, can I get a motion and a second for further discussion?
So moved.
Motion made Commissioner Wilson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Winter. Discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Wilson?
they've been at our last 2 planning sessions, and I really want to thank Blue Cross for their taking this position, and they're paying everything at like $100,000 a year.
Correct.
For this position for 3 years, and it's to help our dental with the young people and stuff, so I really appreciate the fact that they're doing this for us.
And again, just to make it clear that it is not just about Blue Cross Blue Shield members, which I think they were pretty clear about as well. It is about dental health across the 5 counties, irregardless of health plans, to some degree, age. And again, I think part of the reason they are looking at Morrison County is our relationship with Apple Tree Dental and Northland Dental, which again are 2 strong providers for PMAP plans and the lower income populations. So
They also said you were good to work with.
that's what they
Yeah,
said,
you
but
forgot to say that. You
Yes, they
forgot to
did.
say that.
Many times. Commissioner Zelinski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, Brad, I think it's really important that we take an honest look at what we're talking about here. We're talking about a regional dental coordinator for public health. And although this, if it's cliche is the right word, I'm not sure, is maybe overused, but we can either be at the table or we can be on the menu. And quite honestly, as the regional coordinator for Morrison County, we're at the table, we're front, we're center, we're not in the back of the room, we're not wondering, well, I wonder what we should do. We're doing it. And I think that that speaks highly, not only of Blue Cross for selecting Morrison County, but it speaks highly of Morrison County. And for your input in that and for your staff, I just have to tell you, I appreciate that at all. But I think that the song should be sung in Morrison County, that this is what we're doing, that it truly is a regional dental coordinator plan. This isn't just for us, this is for everyone, but we're working together. So thank you.
and just, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna make one comment, and again, I think part of the reason they selected Morrison County was due to our child and teen checkup program. Karen Ottman has done a great job collaborating with clinics on that program, and so we see pretty good rates around that. So kudos to Karen and the work she's done along with Cindy.
Commissioner Winter, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, we looked at this here, as a matter of fact, the Blue Cross came a couple times, and I just want to reiterate that this is all going to be funded by Blue Cross Blue Shield. Even the benefits are going to be, the question that, again, I know the answer, but if you could explain why is Morrison County being involved? Are we going to house this person here? Is this person going to be a dentist? Or what's the exact position? And again, I know the answer, if you could explain that.
So the goal of this position, it's gonna be a bachelor's level position that will be really trying to focus on population health across 5 counties. I think you made a good point. Why doesn't Blue Cross Blue Shield just pay for a dentist? Well, that's just one person in one area that really is not gonna, may not improve access across all 5 counties, or even in this county. And so really trying to look at innovative strategies to increase dental health, whether it's trying to develop new processes with dentists, creating other entities that can do it, looking at some school, collaboration with schools. So it's really looking at population health And so, no, it would not be a dentist. It would be a bachelor's level person who can really bring, I think, people together across the 5 counties, providers, schools, public health, social services, and trying to figure out new ways to increase dental health.
And one thing that they discussed too is not only is Morrison County behind, I would say, or not behind, but struggling with dental access, it's the whole state of Minnesota.
Yeah.
And I think it's great for our community that we're gonna be a part of this, and if it don't work, well, at least we tried, but
Yeah.
it's always nice to try something, and maybe that'll increase the access. And because one of the things they said was the biggest problem is people don't show up to their appointments, and we're hoping that this person will keep that going and open more doors to dentists within our region.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, who knows, maybe our speaker right before this will have something to do with that, with transportation. You know, we
Yeah.
talk about people not showing up. Maybe it's because there's a disconnect. But I think by having that coordinator, if there is that disconnect, we have someone that can work together and, you know, open a new door. And maybe that's going to be this change here, and maybe it'll work. But as Commissioner Lemire said, if we don't try it, we're going nowhere, so I appreciate that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
The next thing on the agenda is the approval of a new annual mobile food unit license, which allows them no limitation on the number of events and allowed to be in any place for 21 consecutive days, and it's Raquel's Kitchen.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Winter, second by Commissioner Jelinski. Discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Jelinski.
Maybe, I see that Raquel is with us today. She could explain to us what her kitchen is all about, if you don't
Sure.
mind me
If
to
I could
ask.
just ask you to go to the microphone so everybody can hear you. And I heard she's a pretty darn good cook, I don't know.
Oh, I've heard the same.
Good morning, Rachel. Raquel. I should
Good
say.
morning.
Chairman, Commissioners.
Sorry.
Did I say that right? I guess I'm not sure. Is it Rachel or Raquel? I'm sorry.
It's Raquel.
Okay, it was right.
As in Welsh, except a lot hotter.
That's right.
So I guess you probably all know that my husband and I, due to COVID-19, had to close our bed and breakfast. And so we're very fortunate that we're able to move into a new adventure and hopefully be able to keep that big, beautiful house for a while anyway. So Raquel's Kitchen is basically just a food truck. And we own a vacant lot down on First Street next to Marshak Insurance. And my husband has assumed a name, and so the lot is Scott's Lot. And we're hoping to turn it into like a food truck court and bring in 4 or 5 food trucks in addition to ours. And we'll be all around the county as well. But we're gonna be serving up some fry bread. Yum, the best. Fry bread tacos, beef, chicken, shrimp, vegetarian, all kinds of good stuff. So if you approve our license, then we will gladly allow you to pay full price for anything on the menu. And we look forward to feeding you.
I seen your truck, you got a nice truck.
It's big, it's 31-foot Freightliner with a 22-foot kitchen. So I'm pretty excited about that.
You were
Yeah.
at my place when you put a floor in it.
Oh, were you mowing the lawn?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yes, I
I
was.
thought you looked familiar. Didn't recognize you with the tie on.
Any other discussion?
If I may.
Commissioner
Mr.
Winchell.
Chair. Again, you know, it's sad to see that bed and breakfast. Everyone knows where that place is. It's a gorgeous building or house, I should say. But again, Raquel, this is something that you're gonna stay in Morrison County. We discussed this extensively here a week or two ago, but I'm hoping that everything goes well and you're very successful at this here. So again, I think it's not a want, it's a need that we have for Morrison County. Something that hopefully it'll make us a better county. So thank you for that.
Thank you, and I'd like to add that I think normally the process is that we pass the inspection through public health, and then you license us, but we're hoping to get the truck this week, So I don't want to have to wait till your next meeting. I want to get going right away.
That sounds great. We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Any,
Make sure you apply for our grants from being shut down. That's part of it, isn't it?
I've actually, that's
CARES money you're
that's
talking
done. Yep, we have applied. Thank you.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you
That's all I have this
so
morning,
much.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners.
Thank you, Brad. Have a great day.
You too.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to represent
Amy?
Land Services.
Right.
Jean, we're a
Deb?
team here this morning. There are a few action items that Amy asked me to address with you, gentlemen. First is to consider an interim use permit for Jason and Tammy Leibold to establish a limited rural business, specifically a tree care and firewood business, including one condition, which is per recommendation from the Morrison County Planning Commission on July 27th, 2020. And I'll find that condition quickly. And that is an interim use permit to Jason and Tammy Leibold to establish a limited rural business, specifically a tree care and firewood business located on Section 12, Bellevue Township, and hereby moves to grant the interim use permit with one condition. Let me continue to read the same sentence over and over again there. Sorry about that. The interim use permit shall terminate when the property is no longer in the Leibold name. And as you know, an interim use permit needs to have an end date, and so that's why that was established.
Could I get a motion and a second for further discussion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Jelinski. Discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. The next is to consider a conditional use permit for Sherping Dairy LLC to amend the existing conditional use permit granted in 2006, excuse me, to Sherping Dairy LLC and to add an additional 71.64 acres per recommendation from the Planning Commission on July 27th, 2020. And from what I understand, this was just adding property to the existing location for that established feedlot.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
Motion by Commissioner Blaine,
Second.
second by Commissioner Wincher. Discussion?
Mr. Chair, this is actually a land swap to allow them a piece of property next door that allowed them to expand the manure storage.
Very good. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, and the final one on the land use side, I believe, is to consider the conditional use permit for Michael Shermers to expand to a Tier 3 poultry, swine, beef feedlot, including conditions per recommendation from the Planning Commission. And I'll read those conditions if you give me one moment. Oops. Abide by local and state law. Notify road authority when hauling manure during road restrictions. Abide by the good neighbor feedlot odor minimization and stormwater plans. The feedlot officer shall be notified when poultry barn is stocked. Cattle shall be kept at least 200 feet from the creek. A designated cattle creek crossing shall be installed along with exclusion fencing to keep cattle out of the creek. Location of the swine barn shall be determined and agreed upon by the feedlot officer prior to the land use permit application. The feedlot owner shall notify field officers of transferred manure of the need to work with the feedlot officer on solid manure stockpiling locations if stockpiling shall occur. The feedlot owner shall notify the feedlot officer of manure cleanout.
I'll make a motion with the 9 conditions attached.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Wincher, second by Commissioner Wilson. Discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, thank you on Amy's behalf, and Jean's here to talk abatements.
Good morning, Jean.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jean.
It's exciting, isn't it, abatements?
We're just glad to see you.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
that's
so
why we like it
nice.
so much.
That's so
It
nice.
is if you're this person.
Right? So I do have one request for an approval for an abatement for Daniel Elmer of Scandia Valley Township. The travel trailer was sold by the owner in 2018, and the parcel was not inactivated. So the total amount is $66 plus any accrued penalty and interest.
Make that motion.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson,
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jelinski. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Right, I also have a tax court settlement for Stearns Electric. The abatement totaled $714 for the 9 parcels. And since this was a judgment, the board will not have to vote on it. It's just being brought to you for information so that you're aware that that is going through.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioners, anything?
Can we get an explanation on that?
Yeah, we're just gonna say,
What this entails?
Sure. It is a state assessed property, so such as your railroads. This is
Pipeline.
it's done by the state. So they disagreed with the value and it was taken to court. So this was the settlement of the reduced value and in so being the reduced taxes.
And Mr. Chair, that they would be Stearns Electric challenged that
Correct.
property value, and then counties that have property with, or that Stearns Electric is located in would then be, doing the subsequent reduction in tax as it relates to the value that was determined by the court. Similar to, we've talked about pipeline challenges and those utilities, railroad challenges. That's the
Yeah.
recourse when it comes to challenging those state-assessed properties.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes.
So, for clarification, then, the disagreement was over the value of public land or government-owned land, not private land, correct?
Well, it was owned by Stearns
Yeah.
Electric.
Yeah, this would be like, this would be in the instance for the utility land that they may have a substation on, or that they may have a line that crosses. Very good, thank
Commissioner
you.
Wilson?
Gene, you brought to us before, like, I think it was the railroad, wasn't it, or was the pipeline? But anyway, this one here now, does this get us up to date, for instance, so that they'll reevaluate those at the right valuation?
Well, and it wasn't that it was incorrect, it was just taken to court and contested. So, every year, these values are, state values these properties, on an annual basis. So they will have another valuation notice that they will receive for next year. Depending upon individual circumstances, as far as, moving forward with the court, it's just the current year that they're working on. So it brings us up to date as of now, but, next year when valuation notices come out, or this year when valuation notices come out, it will be a different number.
I guess my question maybe then is, can they go back 5 years and do the last 5 years, or since this came to court for that year,
Then it'll just be moving forward.
forward from that position?
Yep.
Okay, because that one was a pretty big amount that, yeah.
And it's still in discussion yet, it hasn't been finalized yet, and some counties were substantially impacted, because while those entities, have every right to look at the values and challenge that, whether it be with us on a private property or with, the state of Minnesota on utilities, they, that translates to taxes. And so if an award is given that lowers that value, then it translates to that return of those tax dollars. And so, with this settlement, it was quite minimal in,
Correct.
I'm certain it's more impactful to other counties in which they have more property or more, value that's going to be impacting that. But that's kind of, private properties have on an annual basis through the Board of Equalization and through that appeals process that they can challenge or question the value that we put on. This is a unique situation because we're at the mercy of the state doing the evaluation and don't really have any type of influence in that valuation process, but yet are tasked with the cleanup if there's a challenge that's successful or a court awards that. It makes it difficult, especially when it's significant, like what we had talked about previously with the pipeline, in terms of the overall state and what's happening.
Commissioner Blaine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, to that point, Deb and Jean, so in this case, the utility was taking legal action to challenge the value of property, and taking this to court. Does Morrison County assume any legal costs in this process, or because their argument is not with us, it's with the state of Minnesota, we suffer the ancillary effects of a judgment, one way or the other, correct?
Yes.
And so I was just curious if these discrepancies cause us to incur costs on legal representation.
No.
Okay.
If it was a local appeal on other properties, private properties, yes, then we're in court.
But this is
This is not.
This is the utilities argument with the state of Minnesota's valuation of property, not
Yep.
with the county.
We just pay the taxes back that were paid to us that would correlate to that value reduction.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Have a
Gene.
great day.
Have a great day.
Next on the agenda, Veterans Affairs.
I do, and I didn't know that they challenged that.
Good morning, Kathy.
Good morning.
Morning, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
So I'm just here this morning to talk about getting our resolution signed for our annual $10,000 grant that we get from the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs. And what we're planning on using that grant for this year is to support our veterans, focusing primarily on, well, all veterans, but also female veterans and veterans that are younger generations, our Iraqi veterans that are returning from deployments, and also support to the families and individuals who are deploying or being called to more active duty than they were before. So providing resources for mental health, financial support, whatever we can do to make those transitions back into society more successful, and also to kind of alleviate some of the mental health stressors that we have coming about too with the pandemic. So that's what we have. So we're just needing approval and signature to accept those funds for 2021.
I'll move on this, Mr. Chair.
Motion made by Commissioner Jelinski,
Second.
second by Commissioner Blaine. Further discussions? I just have one question. Is there a difference between the first resolution and the second resolution?
I don't know. Kathy would need to tell me that.
Oh,
No, I think we had to close out the other one, and this is the new one for the next year, if I remember right. I hope I didn't do it twice, but I may have.
Did you notice anything, Tibbs?
Well, I thought they were separate, so I apologize if there was.
Were they
It's-
submitted
Oh,
twice?
for today, no, there's just one. There's one
Okay.
grant.
all right,
Sorry
very good.
if there was confusion there.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, have a lovely day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, Auditor Treasurer.
How can Chelsea be here? It's voting day.
Yeah.
Good morning, Chelsea.
Morning, Chelsea.
Good morning. How are you guys? Good. Before you today, I have two gambling resolutions. The first one in front of you is requesting approval for the lawful gambling resolution for Hillman Area Whitetail Management Association and Corporation to hold a raffle on December 5th of this year at the Brothers Porcupine Bar and Grill.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Wincher. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next resolution I have in front of you is requesting approval for the off-site gambling resolution for the Lincoln Area Business Association to hold a raffle on October 17th of this year at the Two Tall Tavern.
Commissioners?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Wincher,
Second.
second by Commissioner Blaine. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And next on the agenda, I have requests for warrants to be approved.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we pay all the bills.
Motion by Commissioner Jelinski,
Second.
second by Commissioner Blaine to pay all the bills. Discussion? This will be a roll call. Commissioner Wincher?
Aye.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion carried.
And that is it for me. Just a reminder that today is the state primary election date.
Get out and vote.
Get out and vote.
So is it busy up in the courthouse today?
In our office, we hold for the mail ballots, and so we're processing mail ballots and absentee. So we are busy in the office, and then I was to the southwest area of Morrison County this morning. I just got back in to the office here, so polls are open, voters are in the booths, and so it's looking good.
Question I have, Mr. Chair, is everyone required to wear a mask when they come in and vote, or is someone handed to them if they don't have one?
Yes, so with the governor's executive order, it is the mask mandate that we have, and if voters coming into the polls don't have a mask, they'll be handed a free mask to wear if they don't have one. And then election judges are wearing masks, and if they're unable to wear a mask, they're wearing face shields. Yep.
Perfect.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks, Chelsea. Bye-bye.
Next on the agenda, Administrator's Report. Ms. Gruber.
Mr. Chair, I have before you a proclamation, or a resolution, I should say, that kind of defines resolutions and proclamations for the county. We've talked about this a number of times at the planning sessions. And what this resolution really does, it was something that I had seen elsewhere, and through discussion, you determined it was something you wanted to bring forward for discussion and consideration. It really does a good job, I think, defining what it is as county government we do. And to make sure that we are all, not only from a staff perspective, staying on track, offers guidance for the board when it comes to really what our work and what really is in our wheelhouse as county government and kind of what isn't. So we make sure that we're spending resources and time on that business that impacts and works for the citizens and what we are able to do. And so that's what this does. I don't know, Mr. Chair, if you want me to read any of it or not, but it really goes through what resolutions are for the county board and what we need to take action on as a course of our business. It addresses what happens or what's to be considered when it comes to influence for state and federal policy. And then also proclamations and resolutions that really aren't the business of county government, even though some may not realize that when they bring that forward or have a request. But it allows us to provide some guidance when it comes to that and why.
Gentlemen, or Commissioners, could I get a motion and a second for further discussion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Commissioner Blaine.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jelinski. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right. And then, Mr. Chair, the second item is MHB. And I'm going to actually turn this over maybe to Commissioner Wilson, because this was addressed with some questions when the meeting when I was gone, so I'm not exactly as familiar with
We
it.
have Mr. Bukowski come forward, please. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Steve.
And just for the viewers, MHB is the Mississippi Headwaters Board.
Yeah, and Mike sits on there.
This
so.
was a project with signage. I know we go all the way from Aiken down the Mississippi River, telling people where they can get on and where they can get off and how far it is to the next spot. And Tim was here asking if we would put one of these up at Belle Prairie, I think it was. And the question came in on how much it's gonna cost and who will do this. And I had talked to Steve, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but we were gonna put no more than $1,000 into this project, and that you would work on it this winter with people and put it up next spring. Am I correct on that?
Correct. That was the intention, is that we believe Tim had sent some costs for the previous ones that were put out, and we believe it probably can be done for under $1,000. But, just to come in and all of a sudden that becomes our top priority doesn't quite work.
Right.
So we were gonna fit it in when we have spare time throughout the winter, and then we'd install it in the spring.
And that's what we wanted. We wanted to hear what you thought, if you had the time, if you had the manpower to do this, and we did wanted to know what cost, which he didn't know at the time he was here. So that's why we brought it back again for further discussion, and we appreciate you being here.
Mr. Chair, he said the one in Brainerd, they paid about $750 to do that one, so. I think it's a good project. I think, we spend a lot of money on trails and stuff, and here we got the river, and really all we need to do is tell people where to get on and where to get off. And I know I've thought about that before, but it's like, well, how long would it take you to go from Camp Ripley down to Little Falls, and where would you get off at, and where would you get on at? And so I believe it's a good project, but I thank you for doing that.
you know, one of the items that was utilized to promote the regional declaration for Belprairie Park was the Mississippi River Trail is what it's called essentially, and it is a water trail in which you can canoe from here to there. And so that is becoming more and more advertised and promoted, and I mean, we have a business in town here that also, you know, thrives on that. So I agree, I think that it isn't anything, you know, out of line to do this, but it just needs to fall in place with everything else.
All right, any further discussion? Did I get a motion and a second on that, Tabitha? No?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson,
Second.
second by Commissioner Jelinski. Discussion? Just roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Mr. Chair, I don't have any other action items. I was just gonna let you know we're continuing to work on, the phase 5 of our project. And I'm sure Mike will be in the next meeting, but just letting you know, they're installing carpet. They must be almost complete. I haven't been up there yet this week. And also the parking lot is complete, and so it looks nice. I appreciate your support of that. We're working on getting the county vehicles moved over. We're gonna have them located, not in that prime parking in the horseshoe. We're having them in a different area, to keep that really, accessible for those that visit us. What else is there? Continuing to plug away otherwise, but, yeah, I just wanted to, again, let you know we should be complete with the parking lot, and I appreciate, Public Works help. John from Maintenance has been doing a lot too to coordinate those efforts, so I appreciate everybody's assistance with that and move that along. Especially, you know, the weather wasn't too bad in terms of cooperating. It certainly could have been worse, so. Well, other than that major rain event, I forgot about that. But look at how quickly you forget about that. That was a little bit of a problem, but it does look nice.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Deb, I really like the new design of coming in and going around and taking out that middle piece. I think for plowing snow and everything, it's gonna be much better, and I like the entrance much better.
Anything else, Deb?
I don't have anything, unless anybody has anything for me.
What are the dates you need, Tabitha?
August 16th through August 29th.
Commissioner Blaine, would you like to start?
I certainly can.
Or Commissioner Wilson?
Go ahead, Mike.
Boy, you got rid of that fast. Thank you. On the 18th, I've got planning session at 8:30. I have community development at 12:15. And I think I got board of, let me see what this one is. Nope, that's not for you. Then on the 24th, the Planning Commission at 7 o'clock at night. Board meeting on the 25th at 9. Budget meeting at 11. Mississippi Headwaters on the 28th. Was that the last date you wanted?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, well, it was last time. That'd be in Walker.
All right, I think the planning commission was canceled, wasn't it? Yeah,
For the 24th?
yeah. It says, canceled August planning commission meeting.
I think the.
Just that one.
I think the initial notice that was sent was canceled. But I think there, Mr. Chair, I think there is a planning commission meeting on that night. I think that the initial notice got canceled, but then, because if I remember right, I think we've already received the packet
Yeah.
for that evening.
Okay.
But I have that same thing on my calendar too.
I think an individual canceled it and it went to everybody's calendar, is
Yes,
what I'm recalling.
Yes,
so.
thank you, for that.
All right. Commissioner Winter?
All right.
Pulling the mic from here.
We also have a budget session at 10:30 on the 18th. It's after, I shouldn't say it's exactly at 10:30, but somewhere after that. I have a Great River Regional in St. Cloud at 6 o'clock, so it's gonna be there. On the 20th, I have a U of M Extension virtual meeting from on the 20th, Thursday, from 10 to noon. Again, we have on the 25th, did somebody say we had board, right?
Yep.
But we have a budget afterwards.
Yep.
And again, whatever time that comes up. On the 28th, I have a soil and water, and that'll be here at 8 o'clock, here at the boardroom for soil and water. So that would take care of me, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Jelinski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On Tuesday, the 18th at 6:30 in the evening, I've got a EMS first responder funding group meeting at Lions Park. This is something that Commissioner Blaine has pointed the finger at me and said, you're going to get on this committee, and we're going to speak to EMS funding. And that's about as much as I can say. This would be the initial meeting, if you will, for that. On the 19th at 11 o'clock in the morning, I have a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board Executive Committee meeting. I believe that's in St. Cloud. 5 o'clock that same evening, I've got a Hands of Hope meeting. That should be virtual. On the 20th at 10 o'clock in the morning, I have a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board Owners and Operators meeting. Normally, that would be in Douglas County. I believe that is going to be virtual. At 7 o'clock that evening, I've got an Egg Society meeting. That should be, I believe, at the fairgrounds. On the 21st, as we all know, the Hope Rocks concert has been canceled, but that would have been the date for it. On the 23rd, well, I won't say that because I'd be missing your birthday because yours is first before mine, so I'm not going to go to that. We didn't discuss that. On the 24th, I'm going to try out getting a new driver's license. I made an appointment, and I'm on for that. That's kind of a big deal because
Thanks for reminding me.
we
Mine's
talk
coming
about
up.
it all the time, but I don't know if anybody all has gone through that yet, but I made my appointment, so it's kind of cool. On the 27th at 12:30, I've got a State Emergency Communications Board meeting. Normally, that's in St. Paul. That, I believe, is going to be virtual. And, Mr. Chair, I believe that's everything that I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Jelinski. Commissioner Blaine?
Mr. Chair, thank you. First, I want to say thank you to Commissioner Jelinski for agreeing to be a part of our effort on EMS funding. And his expertise is needed. That's why I twisted his arm to make sure that he would be a part of that process, because he has the expertise and the knowledge base that I don't. The only thing I can add to the calendar, Mr. Chair, is on August 27th at 6 p.m., Region 5 board will meet. And Tabitha, I can't confirm that yet, that it is possible, it could be in person, but I'm going to say that it's most likely will stay virtual. That's all I have for you, Mr. Chair.
Right. And all I have is on the 25th, HRA, 7 a.m. Yes, at HRA. Anything else?
We have a drainage authority immediately following, just so you know. Or we can take a break, but I mean, just following that.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Commissioner Jelinski, second by Commissioner Blaine.
Thank you.
To adjourn, discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Good job, right on time.
Just a little break and we'll then convene a drainage authority meeting?